Hello and welcome to Courageous Conversations.
We're here to talk honestly about race, faith, and what it really means to love our neighbor at all costs.
Each and every episode, we are going to sit down with friends and leaders from across Kansas City to share stories. We're going to ask hard questions and we'll laugh a little bit along the way.
To unite people, unite neighborhoods, and eventually unite KC. Let's jump into today's conversation.
Well, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, no matter where you are in the world. And welcome to another episode of Courageous Conversations. And I'm here with my co-host, Gary Kendall.
Yeah, thank you for joining. It's really a privilege to be able to meet you, whether you're out there mowing the lawn or this week here in Kansas City shoveling
snow, right?
Yes. Or whether you're working out or whatever you're doing. And we just want to encourage you to take these conversations and spread the word. Like, have conversations of your own, tell your own stories, share your own heartache, share the victories. Mm-hmm. And if you want to keep hearing from us, and you can subscribe and you can like and share. You can find these conversations on Spotify. You can find them on Apple. You can find them on our YouTube channel for Unite KC and on our unitekc.org website. But we would just love to keep this conversation going with you.
Yeah, and you want to do that because you can brag to all your friends that you know someone famous. Gary is very famous, and so you want to.
And Ray is a comedian. Or a wannabe comedian.
I didn't miss my calling, trust me. So, well, I want to let you know ahead of time that this is going to be, we're going to have some difficult conversations this time, but that's what this podcast is about.
It'll be a little bumpy.
It will be bumpy, but, and so I've got my notes because I really want to make sure that I have my facts straight, and we're going to present you with a lot of factual information, but we're going to talk about the origins, some of the origins of racism in our country. And surprisingly, they start in the church, Gary. Yeah. So I'm going to read a quote and then we're going to get started. And it starts out saying, "Welcome, friends. Today we are wading into deep waters together. Some of what we discuss might trigger a defensive response, a clenching jaw, a hot face, or an internal argument forming before you actually finish hearing a sentence that's spoken today. But as leaders, we are choosing to be quick to listen and slow to speak, and trusting that the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is what sets us free."
Right.
So you just want to remind you, we're not here to assign guilt or shame.
Right.
We're here because we love Kansas City, we love the church, and because we believe that facing our history honestly is the only path to genuine unity and flourishing.
You said that well.
I read it well, too, I hope.
Today, we're going to get into some things that I think especially for people who are white,
Mm-hmm.
it may be a little bit hard to hear. And so I don't apologize for that. Maybe just give you a little bit of a warning, put on your seatbelt. But at the same time, I want to invite you into something beautiful. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, a vision for the world that sees color everywhere.
Yeah.
None of us want to watch a black and white TV.
There you go.
And this, Unite KC isn't just about white and black, by the way. It's, we're talking about all races, cultures and color. And in the process of that, a lot of times the white and the black seem to be the ones that are highlighted. But we're really talking about mankind. Mm-hmm. In our human journey to understand each other and to see ourselves even from God's perspective.
Gary, I'm going to start, I'm going to give another quote that I heard. I'm stealing this from a very famous doctor who has a lot of degrees, and he was doing actually a live shooting for a Netflix special, and there were all kinds of people from all different backgrounds in the audience. And he started out by saying, "Raise your hand if you had a part in starting and perpetuating slavery." Of course, nobody's hand goes up.
Right.
And then he said, "Well, how many of you have owned slaves or been a part of slavery yourselves? Raise your hand." No one raises their hand. And he goes, "So you're not the problem." He goes, but what has happened in America is that we are living in the results of that problem.
Right. Right.
And so that's why we're,
It's a good place.
yep. So we want to make sure that we are unoffensive. So we're going to replace the term white privilege with unearned advantages or inherited head starts. Now, that doesn't negate it, but it does explain it. And so in terms that people could probably come along with. And why don't you guess which one I'm going to say this time? Okay, here's the definition.
White people are complicit.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that right?
You're right. Okay. So and so that could
Which,
be,
by the way, no one wants to hear.
Because again, the one thing that I don't think I've ever told you this, but it was one of the things that I recognized about you, and so, I mean, you're going to be humble and not say that these things are true, but Gary, you're educated, you're accomplished, you've done well by your family, you have a good name in the community. And so all those things are true. And what I realized with people who are like that is that it's easy. What you could do is go, I'm going to take my ball and go home. Right. And so it's just easy.
I'm going to sit out this.
That's right. Yeah. I'll sit this round out.
Right.
So,
well, thank you for that. I think that for a lot of people who are white, and I can't speak for everybody. Like you don't speak for every black just because you're black. I don't speak for every white because I'm white. But one of the things that I feel like is especially normal or average is if these situations come up that could be tense or they could be uncomfortable or where we're recognizing there is equality in our world today. Things are not fair. They're not right. They're not just. And I don't know anybody who would say that they were. All you have to do is turn on the TV and you can figure out pretty fast they're not. But then people don't want to be blamed for that. So the word complicit is not a word that white people like to use because a lot of them would say, I'm doing everything I know to do. Like, are you pinning this on me? Like you're acting like I'm the problem. I haven't done anything but tried to be a good friend to my friends.
That's right.
And it feels unfair. And I would say, whoa, well, welcome to the world that blacks live in, or any other race.
That's right.
I don't care if you're Russian and you're living in the U.S., you're going to feel a bit out of place at times. So the word complicit, I mean, maybe we could just change the word and say that we all have some blind spots.
Yep.
We all have some hesitancy on trying to dive into things that we maybe don't understand. I'll give you an example that's concrete. So I'm a pastor at a church, and a black man came up to me on Sunday, and he said, where are the men of God today? And I said, oh, help me out. What are you?
Where are we going?
That could go in a lot of directions.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he goes, well, you watch the TV, you know what's going on, which I'm assuming he's thinking about what's happening in Minnesota.
Right.
And he said, how come no one wants to speak out? And I said, that's a good question. I said, I can't really speak for everyone, so I don't know how to answer your question. But I would say to you, if you're just asking me the question, because you just did, it's a lot more complex than I know what to do. Like I don't know do I go on social media? Like that probably won't work. Do I try to get on TV? Do I just tell my congregation? What do I do? And it's so complex and so big, I'm not sure where to start. And I said, but I will tell you what I do. So in my city where I know the situation a little better, I know more people, then I advocate with Unite KC. And, I show up to events and I love across the different barriers, whether it's political. I mean, some of the political barriers are just like as bad.
Yeah, they're hard. They're as bad as the race
as any race problem.
Yeah,
and I show up every day and try to love people and work hard to build bridges rather than barriers, and try to break down stereotypes. And that's what I do. I don't know how to solve what's happening in Minnesota, and I don't know that I'm qualified to speak at a national level, but I'll do what I can do here.
Right.
That was my answer to him.
a lot of the data that we've explored, at least in this session, is from a book called White Too Long.
Yes.
And
I don't like the title.
Yeah, what a controversial title.
What do you do with that?
Yeah, you see that on the
I can't
bookshelf
help
and you're just like,
color I was born.
that's right. So
Neither can you.
but here's the thing, I think it sells books because it's you got to grab people's attention, but
Do you think it's sold white or do you think it's sold black?
well, let me tell you what I think.
Okay.
So I read it, first I was even kind of like, what am I going to should I put this book in a brown paper bag, But a friend of mine from Oklahoma recommended that I read it, and he told me it's the most factual based because he doesn't give his opinions.
He uses a lot of data.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's what he's a historian and he's a data collector and stuff like that. So I certainly didn't expect a title like that. And I gave the book to one of the people who is on our board. And when they saw it, their eyes got really big and they were like, Ray's gone to the dark side. It's over now. We got to pull him back before it's too late.
Well, because people assume blame.
Oh, yeah.
And with blame comes shame.
Yeah. And actually, the title of the book was not something he made up, but a person who was in the civil rights movement, that was a direct quote from them. And they said, in America, I fear like a lot of my friends have been white too long. And he was talking about the complicit nature that it's easy to have. And in the church, what happened, and this is, again, just facts, and then I'm going to let you comment, is that I will talk that there is a major denomination that had a split over the issue of slavery back in the 1800s. Right. And so this southern-based the southern part of this big denomination, they split off and they started having, they all agreed and actually started trying to use scripture to justify their position.
Yeah.
So a lot of what people believe was based there. But
at least that's how it started.
That's how it started. But now when times started to change, the church at large, because they were having this in almost every denomination, this problem.
It's true.
But this is how insidious it became, and is that they said, okay, we agree, slavery's wrong. You shouldn't enslave other people. But we can all agree that minorities are inferior. And that pervasive attitude has perpetuated
itself. Was that from the Jim Crow era? It was right around that time. And so, so you see at least I'm not saying that it disappeared 100%, but you see, a lot of these public lynchings stop. You don't see, like minorities facing a jury of all, white people. And so the civil rights, and so a lot of the things that were just overt racism, you don't see too much anymore. Now, I know you could argue that down, that still exists. And depends on where you live.
Depends on where you live. But the pervasive attitude remained in the church and spread out into the community. And this is why we say we have this inherited bias, is that maybe there's a group of people that have enjoyed a life that wasn't afforded to another group of people. And so that's where I think we are today still.
Well, I think part of it comes even from you go all the way back to the people who settled the U.S. A lot of them were religious people fleeing from England to try to find freedom to practice religion the way that they felt like that they should. At the same time, it wasn't a cause and effect kind of thing, but at the same time, the slave trade was booming. And a lot of those people in England and in the U.S. had slaves. And then, of course, we have the growth of slavery across the South. And so people grew up many people grew up in Christian homes who had slaves. Some of our patriots and from our history's heritage had slaves. And they were able somehow mentally to do the gymnastics of saying, well, this is okay.
Yeah, God is he's ordered things like this.
Yeah, he's allowed it, at least. And I think that was the beginning of the problem. And then it carried forward into today's world. But as we've both said before on this podcast, that Sundays are still the most segregated day of the week. And Sunday schools are probably more segregated than any other school in America. And so the church is still struggling with this problem, years later. And I would say this is a statement that's been said many times, so it's not original with me at all, but all that has to happen for evil to prosper is for good men to do nothing.
Oh, wow.
And
that's powerful.
So I think that when we use the word complicit, people may not like it because it almost implies that you're helping to sustain what's happening. And I would say there's at least the problem of we're not doing enough to address the problem that does exist. And I don't want to be complicit.
Right.
I don't want to have blind spots, but I know I do. So I have to repeatedly ask for God to take off the blinders.
Yeah.
Ask for God to please humble me so I can hear other people, I can see other people, I can feel what they feel. And I go back, Ray, to the scriptures where every man was created in the image of God. And from one family came all the populations of the earth. So whether we look the same, we all are related.
That's it.
And it says we're all made in the image of God. And then I think about the words of Jesus when he said, as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. So if I see my brother being treated in a way that is not honoring the image of God, I feel like I have some responsibility. I can't do everything,
Right.
but I should do something.
Right.
And I feel like the church today, even if, so here's the argument I hear from white pastors. They'll say, well, it's just proven that people like to worship, with their own. It's like, if you have a dominant culture, that culture likes to worship together. You have a minority culture, that culture likes to worship together. Maybe they find safety, maybe they have their own songs, their own music, etc. This is the way the argument goes. And so that actually they probably have a better experience when they're in their own thing than if we try to mix it all up. So there's justification for that. And maybe there's truth to the fact that people do enjoy worshiping with the songs they grew up with or, with people they feel safe with, etc. But I would press on that issue and say, but we're missing out on part of the way that God designed the world.
And I would absolutely 100% agree with you. And Gary, one of the things that I find, so I went to Christian school and I took this course called apologetics, and it was
yes.
Apologetics is the defense of the Christian faith.
I apologize for the course.
So this is hilarious. I won't forget what you just said there, but I feel like I am on one continuous defense of the Christian faith as I have entered into the marketplace. And this is what I remember vividly. Back in the 80s, I'm in corporate America, and somebody said it was a major corporation. I can't remember if it was Coca-Cola or who it was, but it was a really big corporation. And they said, you know what? We're doing this whole thing with diversity because it costs us money not to be that way.
Wow.
And so they said, I don't care, so it didn't equal the playing field, but they were really adamant that you're going to see more minorities in our commercials. You're going to see more minorities.
They want to teach the world to sing.
That's right.
That was their byline.
And I'm telling you, they said, and so the other corporations caught on and they said, you're right. And so they leapfrogged over the church because this whole idea of, people like to stay separate on their own. They said, yeah, we miss me with that.
Right.
We need some more money. This adds to our bottom line if we get all these different people on board. So And so here's where I'm going with this, is that it's really hard because, and I'm going to illustrate this with a short story,
Okay.
but it's really hard as I'm talking to my non-church friends, non-Christian friends. They're like, yeah, well, you got egg on your face because you guys are some of the most prejudicial and closed-minded and bigoted people I've ever met. And
You guys meaning?
you Christian people, you church
okay.
people. So I used to, here's my little story. I'll make it quick. So I had a contract with a school district, and they maintained that I needed to volunteer some of my time because I'm a vendor, right? So I elected to help mentor kids that are in the arts.
Okay.
And so I'm going to their plays and helping out.
Yeah.
And so there was one young lady.
You didn't do any dancing.
I didn't know. They would not let me dance, and neither does the Culture House. I'm still talking to you, Jeremiah. So there was a young lady that ran the lights and different things like that, and she was extremely anti-God, and she's always railing, and I'm always trying to go, no, yeah. And I don't even hang out with people that are like that. And I made this big declaration one day. I said, one day you're going to want to know more about God and you're going to want to go to church. And I said, all I'm telling you right now is that before you do, come and talk to me. And because I wanted to steer her experience.
Going, yes.
So I noticed her little group of friends, and her little group of friends was like the United Nations. There is a black lady. There is a lady from the islands of the sea. That's what she says. Don't call me. I want to be called the islands of the sea. And so she had four girls. And then so it's a Sunday afternoon, and she goes, we need to talk to you. She calls me up on my phone and says, we need to talk to you. Or she texts me. And I go, okay, what's this about? And she goes, well, me and my friends went to church this Sunday. I'm like, I told you not to do that.
Yeah.
They lasted 10 minutes in church, and this is what happened. They went and they said, we had never been to a place where there was like all white people there. Mm-hmm. And she goes, we were scared. We didn't know if we had walked into and I said, well, to be fair, the way you chose the church to go to, you could have ended up in an all-black church or an all-Hispanic church. And I said, I'm very sorry that you had to experience that the Christian faith was like this.
Right.
So it was tough. I'm going to ask if you will comment on some of this. There's these things that we can have our listening audience kind of gauge themselves on.
Okay.
And again, we're not trying to say that anybody's doing anything.
No blame
or shame.
Start where you are.
This book brought out 3 tests, and one of them is called the baseball analogy. The other one is the silence question, which is the theory of silence. And the last one is the mirror test. And so we've all heard, I bet a lot of people have heard the baseball analogy about where we are starting off in life.
Right.
What do you have to say about that?
So, I'm going to guess, but I'll start out plainly.
Okay, yeah.
So the baseball analogy is that a lot of times white people will say that if they reach a certain point in their career, their school, their whatever, that they did it on their own merit, that they raised themselves up by their bootstraps, if I'm going to put it that way, and by their work and by their ingenuity and everything else, they got to where they are. And good.
We don't want to negate the hard work.
We're not saying that they didn't.
That's right.
The reality is, as it has been said, that in some cases a person who's born white is born on third base. Mm-hmm. And what they mean by that is that there's privileges that they don't necessarily even know about. And to illustrate that, Ray, I would just go back to we do a Dividing Lines of Kansas City tour.
That's right.
I'll invite anybody to go. You really,
it's great.
You should make the time to go. Mm-hmm. It's a 3 or 4 hour commitment. But we talk about the history of Kansas City and how J.C. Nichols years ago, and the plaza is named after him. Mm-hmm. But we used his influence to be able to to work with banks to make it almost impossible for a black person or a Jew to be able to get a home loan on the west side of Troost. Yeah. On the east side, it's
East side.
okay.
Yeah.
East side, you could have all the houses you want. And if you go
houses.
down Troost today and you look to the right and to the left as you're either going north or south, you're going to see a drastic difference. And if you look at the data, it'll tell you that the people who are their average income for a husband and a wife, for people living together, is $30,000 or $40,000 more than just the other side of Troost.
Mm-hmm.
Troost was the red line, the dividing line. And the point that I'm making about being born on third base is things like it's easier to get a loan from a bank. You might have a better high school or grade school that you go to. You probably have friends who can help you find a job, a more desirable job,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera. You could go on, but there's many opportunities that a white person wouldn't necessarily even know that they had because they've always had them. But a person who is brown or black might not have the same opportunities. And so that in many circles is called being born on third base.
Right.
And so that's something that's hard for a white person to hear. But I can tell you that white people might have discussions about they hate it if there's reverse prejudice, like because of affirmative action or something, some black person got a job and they didn't get that job when they felt like they were qualified. And then they feel like, oh, there's reverse prejudice going on here. And they can have a big discussion about reverse prejudice. Well, I guess all we're saying is, well, maybe that just proves that there is prejudice in the first place.
That proves the point. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's the being born on third base. The probably the one that I would pick on the most, though. And again, I'm not making fun of whites, and I'm not saying that every white person is complicit.
Sure.
But when it comes to silence, I will say that that's a choice that many white people have that sometimes a person who's brown or black doesn't have. And what I mean by that is they can choose to sit this one out. Mm-hmm. There can be a discussion that comes up at work, and maybe at work they're trying to solve some kind of problem, and race, the idea of race or culture comes up, and they decide to sit it out. Mm-hmm. Someone tells a joke, and instead of saying that's inappropriate, they decide to sit it out. It's the silence. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the silence is deafening. And sometimes because no one speaks up, then there's injustice that happens where if someone would have spoken up, it would have at least forced a discussion, maybe even a different decision. So silence at that point gives consent. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a big one for most white people. And I would say it could be true for blacks too, but we're afraid sometimes that if we really advocate for something, even if we believe in it, it might somehow threaten our position. That maybe I'm going to be less in the eyes of my supervisors or less in the eyes of my friends or others that I'm trying to get their approval mm-hmm. than if I would speak up and really say what I think.
Gary, when Unite KC formed and we sat in think tanks trying to figure out how to fix this, we decided to go on the other side of that very issue, mm-hmm. which is, if we encourage people to talk and then to form relationships and then to work side by side with each other, we've created a situation where, okay, if I'm with Gary and we're in the grocery store and somebody picks a fight with him, or maybe they try to charge him more for whatever happens, try to say, hey, you're stealing or whatever, and I know he wasn't, I'm more likely to not remain silent because now I've learned how to be an advocate, a friend, how to mm-hmm. And not allow those kinds of things.
Yeah, now, you're wonderful in the way you do that.
There's
another piece of this that's just, it's right in the same column of thought here, and that is that in many cases, silence is a protection, mm-hmm. they think. But if this could happen to you, Ray, or if it could happen to someone else, it might happen to me in the future if I'm not willing to speak up. Mm-hmm. And I think that somehow many Christians have kind of come up with a theology that my relationship with God is between me and God. It's a private
right.
thing. It's a personal thing. If I want to grow, I grow as a disciple. My goal is to be more like Jesus. I would say that my black brothers and sisters and brown brothers and sisters have a different kind of view on that, in that our relationship, it can't be just private, it's also public. Because if I don't speak up, a whole race of people or a whole color of people might actually be mistreated. And so the religion almost requires a public kind of like it's a we kind of thing, not just a me thing. And so, I mean, I know from studying the teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was advocating for justice and righteousness and equity for all, not just blacks.
That's right.
He was black.
Yeah.
But he was advocating for all of it. And yet, to prove my point, if you go back and look at any of those documentaries or shots of just from the news, you look at the marches that Dr. Martin Luther King led. It's 95% black, and you see a few whites mixed in there. Well, it was everybody's problem, right?
That's right.
But the blacks felt the onus to advocate, and were thinking more about the brotherhood of mankind or humanity than the whites. And maybe it was because of fear or whatever reason you want to put in there. All I'm saying is somehow many white people felt like they had the option of being silent, where a black person might feel like, if we don't fight for this now, we're never going to have it. So I'm going to potentially, my kids and their kids and the next generations are all going to grow up with the same kind of problems unless I do something. So I would say that was a more public ownership of faith than the private ownership and belief of faith coming from many on the white side. But, I'm not putting everybody in that category. I'm only saying, when I think of like verses like Malachi 6:8, to do justly,
yes,
to love mercy,
that's
and
right,
to walk humbly with your God. How do we do justice if we don't advocate for social kinds of good and concern? Because, are we talking about just the justice between me and my brother, or my biological brother? Or are we talking about justice in our culture? If I'm going to do justice in my culture, I have to advocate. I can't advocate for everything, but I have to advocate for justice and equity and righteousness because Jesus did. That's the way I see Jesus living. And I think of Jesus, Ray, when his first sermon in Nazareth, when he's presenting the idea that, from Isaiah 61, that these things are fulfilled in this day. Good news is preached to the poor. There's hope for the brokenhearted. There's release for the captives. And, it's basically he's presenting the kingdom of heaven has come. And he says this is fulfilled in this day. A big argument breaks out of whether he has a right to say that or not. Well, then he doubles down and he tells a story about Elijah going to a widow in the city of Zarephath. Zarephath was not a Jewish town, but a Gentile town. And he was saying, was she the only one there? And then he talked about Naaman being, encouraged to wash in the waters of the Jordan, who wasn't a Jew. And so Jesus, instead of backing off from the fact, I think he's basically saying the kingdom of heaven is here. And because it is, we're going to learn that Gentiles and Jews are both loved equally by God. Well, that just upset the whole town. They were probably more upset the fact that he said, that they should love Gentiles than the fact that he said he was the Messiah. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, they go together is the point I'm trying to make. That I don't think we get a pass to say I want to grow as a disciple of Jesus if we don't want to act like him and do what he did.
I really racked my head over this, and so I'm going to kind of end with my part of this discussion with this is a good litmus test for anybody to take. And so it starts with a little funny ha ha ha.
Okay.
There's a famous comedian who said, hey, you guys, think that you want to be me, but you don't want to be me. He goes, I'm black, and I'm rich, and you still don't want to be, you don't want to be me. And so, it kind of, you can hear people go, like, he's right.
Yeah, right.
But if you woke up tomorrow and you switched colors,
Wow.
and it could be anything. If you, as a white person, were Hispanic, or Hispanic, you were white, or black, you were white, or Hispanic, answer this question, and this is your homework.
Okay.
Would your life change any?
Whoa.
Would it? I mean, would your job change? Your relationships change? Would anything in your life change?
Wow.
Now, the utopia is that could happen, and you wouldn't miss a beat.
Wow.
Everybody would be fine.
Wow.
And then for you church people, if you changed colors, would you be welcome in your church? Would you feel a difference in the way you were greeted and treated if you go to church? And you could even say, look, hey, this happened to me and I changed colors. It's still me, Ray Jarrett. Would things change?
Wow.
And so these are reasons for you to advocate for change.
Yeah.
And so take that quiz. And
well, in his book, White Too Long, he gives what he calls a racism index.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's in the book. And if you buy the book, you can take the test. The interesting thing about the test is that he gave the same test to people who were quote unquote Christians and people who weren't. And the Christians scored lower than people in the culture. Now explain that.
Yeah. And like I said, it's my apologetic career has continued for all these years because and you know what, I will admit, as much as I love the church and I don't, I told my kids, I said, look, sorry, but your dad is a believer. And I haven't found any other better way to live my life. And so that's why I'm teaching you this. And so, I mean, so don't hate me because you don't agree with my choice.
Right.
But I admit it to being a little embarrassed for the church falling so far behind the rest of the world. And so notice that Gary and I have not mentioned politics once.
I think I'm wearing in the name of my church on my
Yeah,
shirt.
you are. I'm wearing I'm safe. But don't make this about politics, and don't try to guess which parties that Gary and I are from, because you'll get it wrong. I guarantee I would lay money that you wouldn't be able to.
You almost did say the name of the church.
I almost did.
And I do love the Bride of Christ.
Yes.
I love the church.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I care about the church so deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't hate the fact that I'm white, and I don't
Please don't
feel
ever
bad
do that.
about my black friends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my white friends who don't get it yet.
Right.
I'm concerned for them. But I would say this, that I think that the desire of Jesus for all of us would be to see the image of God in every person.
Mm-hmm.
In Latin, they call that imago Dei.
Imago Dei.
See the imago Dei in every person, and that we would look. I hope we do see color, but I also hope that we see beyond it, to see that it's the image of God. And if I was to say to a pastor, maybe there's a pastor watching, and they go, well, okay, Gary, so tell me what we would do. Because there's some truth to the fact that people do like to worship with the songs they know and the people that they know and in the neighborhoods where they live, et cetera. So I don't really think that's all going to change that much. What I do believe is we can bring about some positive things if we'll work at it. For example, I feel like I had the privilege of growing up in churches where we would do services together every so often. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my church was mostly white that I grew up in. But my dad, who was a pastor, had the foresight to make friends with the black pastors and black churches across town. And there were times we would come together and do services together. Even that is a really good step.
Yes.
And if you're a white pastor and you want to find out, is your church open to other people of color, you'll have to ask them.
That's right.
Like, have the courage to ask a person that doesn't look like you if your church feels welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
And then listen.
Perfect.
Like, be quiet and listen, and don't debate what they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Just hear their point of view.
Yeah.
And when you do that, then you're gonna learn, and all of those things will help us get better. And no, we've inherited a lot of things that we didn't create.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We didn't create this situation we live in, but could we create a better living situation for our kids and their kids and into the future? That's the thing that keeps me going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I actually feel a lot of hope when I think about the grade school my kids grew up in. Had 17 different languages spoken in that grade school.
There you go.
Now, I had people tell me you should put your kids in a Christian school. That would be the best thing to do, et cetera, et cetera. And I kept thinking, how can we be salt and light in our world if we just stay on the shelf?
That's right.
We've got to get out into the world.
You gotta.
And experience the cultures we live in. And I watch my grandkids and how they relate to people of other races and cultures.
That's great.
I don't think I can't tell that they love one race more than another. Like, they might have a friend from India just as soon as they would have a friend from South America.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that too.
I am too.
Yeah.
And I celebrate that.
Yeah.
And this is how the world becomes better if we keep working at it. So I hope that no one's hearing condemnation today.
Mm-hmm.
Not shedding blame, but the Bible says the truth will set us free.
That's right.
So the more we can live in the truth, whether we like it or not, the more we can live in the truth, the better it's going to be. And it gives us, it's like going to a counselor. If you can't admit you have a problem, you'll never change. That's one of the first things a counselor will tell you. So let's admit that things could be better, and then let's try to do our best to bring change.
And Gary, like you always say, it's our hope, especially if you've listened this long, it's our hope that you would have this conversation in your circle.
Right.
If you don't agree with us, write us and let us know.
Yeah. Maybe we should have you on the podcast.
That's right. We'll let you have the mic. But the important thing is to share this so that other people can listen and you can have this discussion in your group. And like I said, help bring change to our city and our world. That's right. That's it.
Yeah.
So, hey, thanks. Why don't you wrap us up, Gary?
Okay. Thanks again for listening. And I would love to hear from you. In most cases, like on our YouTube page, you can comment. On our Facebook page, you can comment. You know where to find us, unitekc.org. Our email addresses are there.
Mm-hmm.
Our phone numbers are there.
Mm-hmm.
We get out in public. So we have Walk for Unity, and we're involved in a lot of things around town. Right now, we're involved in a really big effort to get ready to welcome 720,000 people to Kansas City for the World Cup. And so we're working every day to make Kansas City a welcoming place for all these people who come from different cultures and backgrounds. So you can find us. And when you do, I just hope that you'll know we don't feel superior in any way. We feel very humble to be able to have the relationship that you and I share.
Mm-hmm.
And we just want more people to have relationships like that. So subscribe, share, like. And pass on the word. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Courageous Conversations.
We hope you heard something that encourages you to start these conversations in your own life.
Because when we talk, listen, and learn together, we move closer to uniting people, uniting neighborhoods, and uniting KC.
And don't forget, you can find more stories, events, and resources at unitekc.org.
So until next time, go love your neighbors at all costs.